So we had already seen what are the importance of literature review. Now we have to understand what is a research gap or what is the importance of identifying gap areas in research. This is an important area. Okay, so what is a research gap? That is the first thing that we have to understand while going into the research methodology. So here there is a definition for the research gap. A research gap or literature gap refers to unexplored or underexplored areas that have a scope of further research. So I will tell you one example. For example, you are studying about the butterfly diversity of Kerala. When you have gone through the different papers on diversity of butterflies in Kerala, you found that majority of the butterflies are identified from one particular family or two or three particular families, whereas certain families are rarely reported. Only few species are reported from that family. Maybe because that family may be not always very visible. They may be found in certain areas only. So the researchers may not have gone to such areas. That may be the reason why those families are poorly reported. So that is a scope area, and such areas are known by the name research gap. So research gap means it is an area where there is little is known from that area. That means there is a scope for studying that area. That is the meaning of the word research gap. So a research gap or a literature gap refers to unexplored. Unexplored means not well studied. That is the meaning of the word unexplored. Not properly studied or underexplored or very poorly studied. So some areas in all fields are very poorly studied. Some areas may be very widely studied. So those areas which are poorly studied are constituting a research gap. So when we are going for a research, always we have to find out what is the research. For example, you are going to do a MPhil or you are going to do a PhD. There is no meaning in repeating a work that is already done by somebody else. You cannot do a PhD like that. If the title of the PhD is same, then the university has the power to cancel your PhD even after they have awarded it. Because the title of your PhD is Biodiversity of Kerala. Then another person from Kannur University or Kozhikode University is also having the same title, Biodiversity of Kerala. So even if you got a PhD after 4 or 5 years, the university has the power to cancel or withdraw your PhD because no two titles should be similar. When title is similar, that shows that work is similar. So similar works are not allowed in research. That is officially not allowed, and ethically also it is not allowed. So research gap means those areas where there is a scope for study, and this could be a population or a sample. For example, size of the sample, type of the sample, or location of the sample, or the method that we have used for studying about that particular species. So that is a research method. Then data collection. What is the method that we have? For example, for studying about a butterfly species of Kerala, some people may have mainly used net catching is the primary method of butterfly collection. They may not have used other kinds of methods. So that will be a deficiency of their research. So we can use other types of methods also. Then we may be able to collect more number of species. So such a type of methods indicates that there is a scope for further study in research area. And other research variables or condition. Variables means what are the different situations which are varying in research. For example, temperature can be one variable. Then humidity of the locality can be one variable. Rainfall, for example, in some areas of Kerala there is more rainfall. In some other areas the rainfall is poor. Whereas if we go to Munnar area, the temperature is low. It is more colder. Whereas if we come to Kochi area, it is more hotter. So if you study the butterfly diversity in terms of temperature also, we can find some difference in the number of species, type of species that we are getting. So these are all indicates that there is a scope for further study. So that is the meaning of the word research study, research gap. It simply means an area where where it is poorly studied or unexplored. Then how do you identify a research gap? That is a question that we have to address. How can we identify a research gap in an area? So this is what we are going to discuss now. So if you go into the research gap, conducting an exhaustive literature review is your first step. So how can we understand that there is a scope? That is conducting an exhaustive means very detailed, very thorough. That means for regarding the butterfly diversity of Kerala. When you look to the when you gone through the literature, you found that around 100 people have worked in that area. 100 different publication or papers have been produced. Now, first step that you have to do is that collect all the 100 papers and read all the 100 papers. But if you are only collecting 75 papers and based on that 75 papers you are making a research, then your research may not be correct because you don't know what has been written, what has been presented in other 25 papers. So the first thing is that collect all the research papers, then go through those research papers, find out what is known already, and then you will be able to predict these are the things that is already known, and you can also predict that these are the areas which are not known. So that is by going through the literature review, you will be able to understand what are the possible areas which are present, so that you can do research on that. You can study what are the possible study areas that are remaining. So such things you will be easily able to understand than if you are going through a very detailed literature review. Now the second aspect is that as you search for journal articles, you will need to read critically across the breadth of literature to identify this. So reading is a very important thing. That is, reading a paper is not easy. It is not reading like a story. It is not reading like a normal textbook. Reading a research paper is a very important thing, very difficult thing. You have to carefully read each paragraph. What is the methodology they have used? What is the inference or what is their finding? In their discussion part, they have mentioned a lot of things, that this is their conclusion about this research. So you have to carefully read each line. Then only you will be able to find out where there is a scope. Otherwise, if you are not reading it very thoroughly, you will not be able to present before anyone. So these are the things that has been known to science so far. This is an area which is very, very poorly studied. So such aspect has to be very critically analyzed and critically understood. Then only you will be able to find. So that is why reading the literature is a very important part of identifying the gap. Then your goal should be to find a space or opening for contributing a research. For example, when after your BSc or MSc, you may be thinking of doing some PhD. Not all may be interested in doing PhD, but a very few. Maybe out of these 50 students, 1 or 2 students may be only going. And those students, the first thing they will have to find out a research supervisor Sometimes some research supervisor will give you a topic from their own experience. Sometimes they will ask you, you come and find out a topic of your own. And if it is possible for me, I will guide you in that. Then in that case, you have to thoroughly read all the literature. You are working in, for example, you can work in taxonomy, you can work in population, you can work in ecology, you can work in physiology, or in or genetics or biotechnology, or any field you can work. So first thing that you have to do is that you have to critically analyze all the previous literature. Only by analyzing the previous literature, we will be able to understand what is already known. So without knowing what is already known, we will not be able to find out. There is a scope here. There is an opening here. This is an area which I can investigate. There is a space for research here. There is an opening for research here. So this is an area, if I am attempting in this area, there is a possibility that I can contribute something new to the science. So that is the importance of reading, thorough reading, exhaustive reading. This is a very important thing. So reading everything that is known is an important part of identifying how well you read this. So that helps you to identify. If you have gone through the previous literature very thoroughly, you can very easily find out several gaps. But if your reading is poor, you will not be able to find out what are the possible gaps. The first step in gathering broad range of research article on your is certainly the reading. Then last, you may want to look for research that approaches topic from variety of methods, qualitative methods, quantitative methods. For example, regarding the butterfly species, you can have qualitative study and you can have a quantitative study. Both are different. For example, in terms of quantitative study, if you are simply finding number of species of butterfly present in Kerala, that is a quantitative study. You can also do a quantitative study, that is the population estimate of butterfly species in Kerala. That is also a quantitative method. Or you can go for in another way, qualitative studies are there. For example, regarding the life cycle of one particular species of butterfly, regarding the biology or ecology of one particular species of butterfly, regarding the behavioral pattern of one particular species of butterfly. These are all qualitative methods. So, in terms of research, when you are reading, you have to approach the previous literature from both the qualitative perspective, qualitative level, as well as the quantitative level. Then only you will be able to find out find out research gaps. Then the next is challenges you may face while identifying the research gap. So here you can find three important challenges that you may be experiencing while you are going for finding out the research gap. Effort of dealing with enormous amount of information. That is, you might get overwhelmed with number of research gaps you stumble upon and feel confused which one you should focus on. That is a big problem, because when you are reading some, if I told earlier, I told you that there are 100 papers on butterfly. When you read these 100 papers, you can find that there are several areas which are very poorly studied. If you are working on those areas, there is still a scope for further study or new findings is possible. So when you are reading literature like that, you can find number of research gaps, but the problem that comes to your mind is which one you should select. You will be finding number of research gaps you stumble upon, then feel confused which one you should focus on, which one you should select for your PhD work or MPhil thesis. So that is there are some 100 gaps you found. So which of the research gap I should focus on? So that is a challenge that usually scholars will be facing. Then second major challenge is difficulty of searching in an organized manner. For example, some researchers may find it difficult to organize the information they have gathered. One can easily lose ideas if they are not done properly, because you are reading the literature. When you are reading the literature, the one important thing that you have to do is that wherever you found that there is a gap, immediately you have to write down in your notebook. If you are not noting down that in the notebook at the right time, after 1 week or 2 weeks, you may easily forget those things. So even though you have identified a gap, after 1 or 2 months, you may not be remembering that such a gap you have found out. So that organizing your reading, organizing your research work or searching is an important thing. So one can easily lose ideas if they are not noted down properly. Then a third aspect of this is that hesitation in questioning the established norms. That some researchers are not confident enough to challenge the existing knowledge in their field and may hesitate to question what others have claimed in their work. Because the one problem with the majority of researchers, if you are not very well, if you are not gone through your subject area very thoroughly, most of the researchers will be having a difficulty. This difficulty, because several important major researchers, major scientists have made this argument, this finding. Since I am not very much intelligent or very much thoroughly going through this area, is it right or is it appropriate for me to challenge their finding? So this is a question, this is a problem majority of the researchers are facing. So unless you are doing your work very honestly, very thoroughly, you may not be able to question the findings of others. So this hesitation always comes, and the most of the time this hesitation comes because you are not confident of your findings. So if you are not confident of your findings, you may not be able to question the findings of others. So that is a problem that you may be experiencing. So if you are not thoroughly concentrating, thoroughly exploring your field of research. So that is the third aspect, third type of challenge in literature, finding and going through a literature gap. Then fourth aspect is that where can you locate a research gap? So that is the another important. As you begin to gather the literature, you will want to critically read for what has or has not or been learned about from the research. That is, when you are reading your previous research work, you will be finding out what is known, what has not what is not known. So these are some of the areas that you will be finding out. Use the discussion and future research section of the article to understand what the researchers have found and where they point out future or additional areas. Because in every paper, if you go through a research journal or a research paper, usually a research paper has a typical style. There will be a title. Title will be followed by an introduction. After the introduction, there is a paragraph on methodology. Then after the methodology comes the result section. In that result section, in a one page or 2 page, they will be presenting their result. And on the last part of the paragraph, there will be an area called conclusion and discussion. In the conclusion and discussion section, most of the time, the author may be explaining what he has found out and where he thinks that there is a scope for further research. So that is one way by which we can easily find out the scope or the research gap. So use the discussion, use the paragraphs under the area discussion, where the researchers have found, they will be pointing out future or additional research areas. So that is one easiest way for finding out the research gap. Continue to ask critical questions of your topic. Who, what, when, where, and how. So who has done this? What he has told about that? When he has conducted that study? where he has conducted that study, how he has conducted that study. So if you are asking these five different questions, you will be able to find out some possible areas where you can contribute new research. So this is these five questions about your population, about the conditions or about the variables or about the different methods or measurements or outcomes will be giving you some idea about finding out new research area or contributing something new to the science in that area. And also consider what has not been explored in the study, where and what may be a possible gap or opening for your potential research and contribution to the topic. This is something we have already discussed. So coming to the last part of that, once you have outlined the gaps in the literature, point these out and their flows, making sure that you identify the pertinent issues for future study. So once I told you is that one of the important thing that you should have is that once you have a thorough study on your subject area, you will have enough confidence to present before a public or present before an expert that this is an area that has been left out. So if you are working on this area, there is a great scope, there is a scope that I can find out something new, I can contribute something new. So only if you are able to convince a group of experts, usually appointed by the university, then only they will allow you to or permit you to carry out a research work in that area. But most of the time we are doing research because for taking a PhD, and there is an established system for that. So unless you strongly present your data, present your argument before a group of experts. So in order to present your argument before a group of university experts, you should have a thorough knowledge. So identifying the gaps in the literature shows that you understood the topic, and suggesting new work shows you that how you have the potential for further study. So every time what the experts are looking upon is that whether you have understood your research area properly. If you have understood your research area, then there is more than 50% chance that you will be contributing something new to the science. So that is the area that most of the time the experts will be checking. Finding the right voice for your literature review is also important. Make your work clear, concise and informative, because in research, especially in scientific areas, one important thing is that you cannot have a very elaborate explanation of your finding. You have to say your findings in one or two sentences, maybe one or two paragraphs only, because they only have the time for only that. So unless you are able to present your argument in a few sentences, in a 2 or 3 lines, then the experts will not be able to accept your the finding that this is a possible area for research. This is a research gap. So that is also presenting your research gap in a concise. Concise means very brief. At the same time, very informative, very explanatory. It should be detailed. It should be brief. At the same time, you should be providing sufficient information also. And as ever, always leave your reader to something to dwell upon. Dwell upon means something to think upon. So when we are concluding your research, you should always point out that there are certain areas which are still possible, which has been left out, where there is still possibility for further research. So this is how most of the time a research work will be presented. And because when you are doing some research, you may find that you cannot do all the work, because you may be thinking of doing 5 or 10, completing 5 or 10 objectives. Maybe you may be only able to complete 5 or 6 objectives maximum. Then still 4 objectives are remaining, and you can mention that we have conducted research in this area, but still there are certain areas which I have not touched upon, so that it can be a possible area of research in future. Maybe you yourself may be doing or another person will be carrying out that research. So this is the way of finding out research gap, and how utilizing the research gap, how and making the research gap useful for your research work. So that is the an idea regarding research gap. So with this we will stop here.